Richard, we are about to hit a huge milestone in our career of podcasting.
I am able to poop without assistance.
Yeah. I had to hold your
Finally.
hand the last time, though.
Mom always said the day would come.
No, Richard, besides that, we are about to hit our milestone for our 200th episode. 200 straight weeks, mind you. And we were wanting to do something super special. So what we planned, Richard, is we're going to have the LOB Army ask us questions. So for our 200th episode, we're going to do an Ask a Bro type of episode.
Yeah. You can send us questions like, why are you still doing this? Do you hate yourselves?
And why haven't you two just gotten married yet? It's legal. Well, if you want to ask that question, you can ask it, damn it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to help us celebrate this huge accomplishment, Richard, we're going to be welcoming a couple of Podcastica Network's own Rima Joe from Strange Indeed and Jason from the Walking Dead cast. He's also from the Evil Dead cast, American God cast, and the Westworld cast.
It's like a television O-cast.
Yes.
Is the television guru.
It's the people who know everything about the good TV shows are going to be like
Exactly.
coming on, and they're going to be like, what's wrong with your audience? Why are they asking these questions?
Yeah. Why do you do this?
They're all slightly homoerotic. Well, yeah. Are these all from you, Shawn?
That's our people. That's our sweet spot.
So like we said, we are opening up these questions for anything. You know, if you want advice, personal or theoretical, we're going to answer anything. They can be as personal or as R-rated as you want. Like we said, if you've ever wanted to know if Richard and I have made out, well, you want to ask that question, right?
Yeah.
You want to know, so all you have to do is ask.
Spoiler alert.
So please get those questions emailed to eatthebeaver@languageofbromance.com. You can Facebook us at www.facebook.com/languageofbromance, or you can tweet us these questions at languageofbro. Just make sure to get them to us by April 7th to be featured in this huge celebration episode, the 200th Language of Bromance episode.
What's up, everybody? I'm Richard.
And I'm Shawn.
And we are speaking the language of bromance, the language of fomance, the language of our origin, the language of our beginning, the language of the genesis.
Yes, we are going back to our Adam and our Eve.
Yes.
So Richard
and our apple.
So Richard,
and when we realized we were naked.
So Richard, for our 37th draft.
37?
In a row?
In a row?
I'm 37? Yes, Richard, what we are going to do for this draft is we are going to do our Kevin Smith draft. So recently, I'm sure people saw in the news, Kevin Smith had a massive heart attack, which he survived and powered through. He beat the Widowmaker, Richard.
Yeah, he did.
He said,
beat it like a champ.
Yeah, like he said, he's like, I've never had a supervillain, but I do now.
Yeah, not today, motherfucker. That's what he said.
And, we had thought about doing like an episode dedicated to Kevin Smith, kind of be like, oh my gosh, like, keep living, sir.
Yeah.
But then I kind of
I'm glad you're not dead.
But then I started doing some numbers in my head and realized, oh my gosh, we're doing our 37th draft soon. And it made complete sense to just kind of awe and ooh over our main man, Kevin Smith. So if you don't know, and you should, what our drafts are, they're 7-round NFL-style drafts where we have 7 picks, basically. So whoever has the first pick in the first round will get the first pick in the second round. Back in the day, we flipped the penny to see who goes first, and I won. So technically on odd drafts, I go first. But Richard, I fucked up our 36th draft, and I took the first round pick. So on this very momentous draft where I would have
fucked up because I didn't call him on it.
I would have loved to have the first round pick draft on this one, but it is totally yours, so I'm being fair. So for this draft, Richard, you will get to start us off. So what is your first round pick for the one and only Kevin Smith?
I would be remiss if I didn't figure out where the whole thing with me, where my love affair started. So when I was about, how old was I at the time? 13 or 14. A friend of mine was visiting from Texas. We had gone to school together and he moved away, but he was back in town and he was visiting. And I remember it was wintertime and he was staying over and we decided we were going to go to Blockbuster Video.
Yeah.
We were going to go to Blockbuster Video. We were going to find fucking movies to watch all night long. And as we were going through, he's like, "Oh, we should pick up this one." And I said, "What the hell is this?" He's like, "Oh, it's a movie by this guy, Kevin Smith." Okay, so I would honestly say, I can honestly say that aside from George Lucas, at the time, my 13-year-old brain, aside from George Lucas, I was kind of unaware of filmmakers.
Yeah.
Or not really unaware, but I didn't really care. I mean, I knew bigger names. I knew Steven Spielberg. The only reason I knew, but aside from George Lucas, this was the first time I actually sought out the name of a director.
I gotcha.
Where I was like, I need to know, not only do I like this movie, I need to know who made it. I need to know where he's from, what he's about. It was one of the first times that I actually became, sort of invested in a filmmaker's career. Okay, Shawn. And I know this might sound out of sequence, but for my first pick, I'm going to go with his second theatrical movie. I'm going to pick Mallrats.
Yes, I remember we've talked about this before. That was kind of your first foray into Kevin Smith.
That was the first one I saw. I saw them out of sequence, and I know people give him a lot of shit for Mallrats, but I don't understand where it comes from.
Well,
because I fucking love that movie, because you have a movie about, because at the time, like, I was 13, I spent I don't know how much of my waking hours inside a mall, not necessarily doing anything. It's not like I was, I wasn't at the mall 8 hours a day buying shit.
Yeah.
I was fucking walking around. I was talking to my friends. I was hanging out.
Well, that's very much a time with like the 90s to the mid early 2000s where there were mall rats. Like, you show that to kids today and like, what the fuck's a mall?
Why are they hanging out at a fucking mall?
Yeah, that place where you get like shitty candles and there's that nasty ass pretzel store. But I think this was one of the movies, like, he had Clerks, which blew up right away. And this was like his second one where I think they thought it would be critically acclaimed. Or not critically acclaimed, but they thought it would be like a big thing. And it kind of fell flat. And I think at the time, like, people were like, oh my gosh, you fucked up. Like, you don't know anything. And it wasn't until, it got to the DVD release and like now, like, it's a classic. Like, people love that movie.
Yes, they do. I think he said it, that it comes around and like things come around and find their audience eventually, and have this kind of like get this like cult status. That doesn't, I mean, it's nice of him to say, but I don't think that happens with every movie.
No. Well, it's crazy because, like, I mean, he's got like a TV series he was trying to pitch for it called Mall Brats, which was going to be kind of an extension of this. Which you talked earlier about, like, how you said Kevin Smith was the first one that you kind of like tried to research and figure out, okay, what is this guy all about? And even to this point, he's probably the only one I do that to. Like, he's the only person, if he's like, hey, I've got this movie coming out, I'm going to try and go see it. There's not really any other director that I do that for. Like, Steven Spielberg can be like, I'm coming out with this movie. I'm like, all right. Like,
I hope it's good.
Yeah. Like, I'll wait for a trailer and see if I want to see it. But Kevin Smith's like, I'm coming out with this. I'm like,
I don't care if it's good.
Yeah. Because
I'm not going to spend my time worrying about that.
Because I mean, like,
those are subtle things. I'll deal with that stuff later.
It's a guy that I really enjoy his work, so I'm going to check out whatever I can.
Exactly. He's
kind of got like,
you know what? I'm not going to even bother like going into the plot of the film or anything like that. I would just say, watch this movie if you like Star Wars references, Batman references. I mean, I don't really understand how you could listen to the show and not be a fan.
Yeah. I'd be curious.
So I feel like I'm kind of preaching to the choir when it comes to that.
As your oldest, it feels like the only one that I could see relating to this of your kids right now would be the oldest. Has she seen it yet? Has she seen Mallrats?
I don't know if she's seen it or not. I'd like to. I think she has.
I just wonder if that
I don't know if I was in the room when she's seen it though.
if that would kind of fall.
Probably not. I don't
Yeah.
know if I would be. I don't know if I was in the room.
I'm just curious.
I don't think it would. I think it would feel a bit odd watching this movie in a room with my daughter,
I still know
on the couch.
if this would kind of fall short on her, like she just wouldn't quite get the whole mall rat idea.
No, I don't know. I mean, she likes older movies. Like she watches, like The Breakfast Club and shit like that.
Yeah.
And granted, those are, the John Hughes movies have like a certain kind of timeless quality to them, and to a point you can't really pick out where they're from or when they're from. I mean, maybe with this in the sense of it being centered at a mall.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they don't really do like Saturday morning detentions either, so.
That's true.
They kind of have an 80s feel, and this would have like an early night because this was kind of his John Hughes movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, I would say this was probably closer to a John Hughes style movie than his other ones. Yeah, I would say that. So, like I said, I'm not going to go into the plot because either you know it because you've seen it 10 times, or you haven't seen it, in which case you need to see it. Go find it. It's on Amazon. I think it's on Amazon Video.
Yeah, you can find this movie anywhere. I think there's a movie channel that shows these all the time. I think it's like one of the Cinemax shows all of his early movies.
Nice.
All right, good first round pick. So for my first round pick, Richard, I had you had introduced me to the movies. JJ, my buddy, was the first one that really introduced me to Kevin Smith with Clerks, and then you and I had our late night movie watching at the restaurant we worked at, where we kind of went through the rest of the library. So. Actually, I think the first one I saw his was Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which kind of was the worst one to start with.
That's way out of you were way out of sequence.
Because JJ told me, he's like, hey, we got to watch this movie. It's by this guy, Kevin Smith. Like, it's all of his movie references in this one. And, like, there's this part where he talks about, it's like, you always tell that Chasing Amy story and you stay bluttering. And so when I watched it, I'm like, I don't get this. Like, it's funny, but I just don't get it. But, all those things, like I fell in love with his style, and in early 2007, I had an internship, and I started getting into podcasts in general, mostly sports podcasts, because that really was like the first foray of podcasts, was a sport podcast. And around end of February, early in March, I'm like, you know what? I wonder if that Kevin Smith guy has a podcast. And I looked, Richard, and he had like 3 or 4 episodes out of a brand new podcast that he started in early February of 2007. And that, Richard, was Smodcast.
Yes.
This is, this is, if I had to say, like, all my inspiration has come from this between, I didn't know who Scott Mosier was. Like, I knew, like, this is Kevin Smith and, like, the Scott Mosier guy. And it's basically like, most of the time whenever you have, like, a best friend that introduces you to their other friend, like, you never hit it off very well. But I always feel like with this, it's like Kevin Smith is my best friend, and he just introduced me to this other guy who's my new best friend, Scott Mosier. And it's kind of like what our show is. It's very much that audio voyeurism where it's like you're a fly on the wall listening to these conversations. And, you start out listening to them, you get like this insight to like their lives that you normally don't get. Like you feel like you know these guys, even though you don't really know them. But, this podcast that they did isn't a PR for their next movie, or, hey, this is what my publicist said I should say on here to get this image of myself out. It's like, it really feels like it's these two guys.
Yeah.
And early on, when we listened to this, it had to been like 2008. I talked to you, I'm pretty sure it was at the sports bar I worked. I'm like, hey, we should do a podcast. And you're like, oh my God, that'd be awesome. And of course, at this point, he wasn't really on his, just do it push. And I remember saying something to the girl I was seeing at the time. I was like, oh, Richard and I are thinking about doing a podcast. And he's like, well, what's a podcast? I'm like, oh, well, it's this thing where you talk and you put it on the internet. It's like, that sounds stupid. Like, nobody'd listen to that. Oh, yeah, I guess you're right. Nobody'd listen to that.
That's dumb.
It's stupid.
That's stupid.
Do you want to have sex still? No? Okay.
And you know what? It was stupid.
But I mean, it's still, it's one of those things that, so many, and Smodcast has done so many first things when it comes to podcasts. Like, it was one of the first ones to do a live show. It's probably one of the first networks that wasn't like PBS type, like NPR type networks.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean,
I'm not sure if that's true, but yeah, that's the first one that I remember.
Yeah,
recall.
I mean, there might have been others, but they were one of the first ones.
Or there might have been shows that were loosely affiliated. together. They had
yeah.
People ran the same circles or whatever. But I think you might be right in the sense that this was the first, like, hey, let's put all these different podcasts under one kind of umbrella.
Yeah. He did like the Smod Castle, where it was a live place where they did shows all the time. They put on I think it was called like Smodcast Festival kind of thing, like early on, like 2009, where they took all these podcasts and they're going to do like this weekend of live shows. I think it was like called Smodfest. And you think of like today, like there's at least 15 to 20 of these podcast festivals where people go and do their live shows. And they were one of the first ones to kind of do that. They never carried it on. They just did it once. But still, it's really, really cool that they've kind of laid the groundwork. And this show's been going on for 10 plus years now, Richard. They are just about to hit 400 episodes. And this is one of those, it's kind of like, there's
and Scott just came back. Like they
he's
were
been
doing
gone for a bit.
Like, he was gone for a long while. And he just came back, and they started doing shows together again, and they're so great.
Yeah, I always feel like it's very much like us. Like the same reason this started out was, it's two friends who were starting to grow apart a little bit because life just gets in the way. And it's very much our story. It's like hey, we haven't talked to each other in a couple of months, and you call, and it's like, oh, hey, how's it going? We talk for an hour and a half. It's like, oh, well, I'll call you next week, and I wouldn't call you next week because life got in the way. And with them, they did the same thing. It's like, hey, listen, we're going to do this thing, require ourselves to sit down once a week. We're going to give it to our audience so that we're kind of held to this, schedule. And we're going to do this thing. It makes me laugh. And I feel like when you listen to that, when you hear him and Scott both laugh, like it's a genuine laugh. Like this is my most favorite moment right now is this, interaction between the two.
Yeah.
And what's great about this, Richard, is the fact too that you get to see Kevin interact. You don't really get to see Scott interact with anybody outside of the circle because it's really just Kevin. But you have him interviewing his daughter, his wife, his mother, his friends. Like he's really brought a lot of his people into this podcast.
Definitely. To the point where with some he actually like spun it off and did whole separate shows.
Yeah,
did a show with his wife.
He's got
a show with Jay and
he's got the Jay. It spun off Fat Man on Batman. It spun off Tell Him Steve Dave. A ton of stuff. And I always like to call like Kevin Smith. He's the guy that launched 1,000 podcasts.
Yeah,
he's the guy that said go out and do this thing because there's no gatekeeper. Just go out and do it. Record, and you're going to have this audio biography for the rest of your life. And that's really what spun us to do our show. And I have to thank him for it because if it wasn't for this, I don't think we would do this show. I mean, it took like 6 years of him doing Smodcast for me and you to finally be like, fuck it, we're doing it. And we're coming up on 4 years at this point, and it's thanks to my number one pick.
Oh my God.
Smodcast.
Yay.
You want a Smodcast? Oh wait, I fucked it up. You want a podcast? I got a Smodcast.
Nope, you're not doing it now.
Oh.
Nope. You fucked it up, and now you're done. Shut it down. We're done here. We're done here, people. I'm in an empty room. All right, Shawn, second pick. So earlier I was saying when it came to my first pick, I was like, hey, this is one of the few directors that I actually am interested in. One of the ones that I actually want to follow. Now for my second pick, I'm not going with the film itself. I'm going with something completely different, something that I didn't know existed until this. This was the first time I ever sat and watched / listened to this. Shawn, for my second pick, I'm going to go with Clerks, but it's not the movie. It is the director's commentary of Clerks.
Okay, great pick. I like that.
Now the reason I'm picking this is because Clerks was kind of heralded as, one of the first independent films to kind of make it big. One of the first indie movies that had gotten a bright shining place in the sun that was released to mainstream audiences and, garnered a reputation as, hey, it was made on a shoestring budget and did really well for itself. So the Independent Film Channel, it would do this once a year where they played the movie 24 hours straight.
Oh, really? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
so the independent film channel would play Clerks for 24 hours straight. But the way they did it is they would play the movie, and then after the movie was over, they would play the movie again, but they did it with the director's commentary.
That's awesome.
And that is when I learned that it was actually a somewhat common thing for directors to do a commentary track over the original movie sound, where basically the movie would be playing and the director and possibly some cast members or producers or whoever, they would sit and talk about the movie as it was happening. So, a scene would happen, and then, the director would say, oh, well, in this, I remember filming this scene, we did this, and on this take, this happened, and whatever.
The way we got the cat to shit on demand is we locked it in a room for all day and not let it shit at all.
But that was the first, I didn't know that it existed. And so this is the first time I'm listening to it, and I remember the commentary so well because when they were doing the commentary, they were at the time they were filming Mallrats.
Okay.
When they were doing the commentary, so Kevin's there and Scott's there, and if you listen to it, it sounds almost exactly like an episode of Smodcast.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Where they're sitting there and they're just fucking bullshitting about what's happening on the screen or what's happening in their life. And I remember the other thing I remember so distinctly about the commentary was Jay was fucking piss drunk
During the commentary?
During the commentary, like Jay was fucking hammered drunk. And Kevin was like, oh, and Jason's here too. Jason, did you want to say something for the... And you could hear like Kevin like had the microphone in his hand and kind of put it up to Jay. And you just hear Jay go, just snitchy bitches, I'm drunk. That's what he says. He goes, snitchy bitches, I'm drunk. And I was like, oh my God, this is like... It was almost like you were getting a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah.
While watching a movie that you really, really fucking liked. And from that point on, I was like, do they do these for other fucking movies? Do other like directors and stuff sit down and talk about like the movie they fucking made? But that was the very first time I listened to a director commentary was for Clerks, and it was super special. And it meant a lot in the sense that it gave me more an insight into how a film actually gets made and, what that entails, what the process entails. And also at the same time, like, hey, it was when I first learned, like, hey, this is me. I made this movie, and I made this movie with my fucking friends, and they're all here and they're going to talk about it.
Yeah, it makes it very much like it puts a humanized like voice behind the thing. Because even up to probably a few years ago, movies felt like this gargantuan thing that like only special people can do.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things I think Kevin Smith does a great job is like, listen, like, real talent is people that made this room with this pillar that, is keeping the ceiling up. Like, anybody can act like Batman. Ben Affleck does it, in 3 movies.
Kinda.
Yeah. I'm Batman.
But yeah, Shawn, there you go. That's pick number 2. It's the director's commentary of Clerks. If anybody hasn't listened to it, I highly recommend listening to it.
I can't remember if I have or not. I've gone through, because I got the Clerks like 15 anniversary DVD set.
I'm sure it's on there.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've seen it once.
So Richard, for my second round pick, this is something that you and I've got to attend. I got to attend one of these with my mother-in-law. And they made a bunch of movies about these where it was, an evening with Mr. Kevin Smith. And essentially they're just his Q&As. This is a guy who, again, he goes on stage and opens the floor up for people to ask any question you want. You get some gold type things. Like you got the Prince story.
The
Bruce Willis story.
The giant spider.
The giant spider for Superman Returns.
The Superman story.
Lives. There's just so many things that it's basically like the stuff that like, oh, we can't tell people that, we can't get this out in the public. He's like, I didn't write a non-disclosure. I can say whatever I want.
Right.
You know, because whenever he signs a NDA, he signs it Ben Affleck. And there was a flick I helped out with a couple years ago, and I should have done it because I was like, "Oh, so like, can I do this like Kevin Smith does?" And the guys didn't really get what I was trying to say, but I should have signed it Kevin Smith.
Yeah,
but I didn't because I'm a good guy.
Yeah, I was thinking you were gonna say I didn't because I'm a pussy.
Yeah, that too. But I mean, like you and I got to attend one, and you never know what he's going to ask. Like he definitely has. He's done so many of them. He's got kind of scripts he goes off of. And
yeah, well, I think he's kind of developed answers over the years, answers that he's going to give to certain questions.
Yeah, and if
certain types of questions,
and he definitely drives people. It's like if somebody's like not asking a good question, I guess he definitely can take that and run with it into a story that makes sense to the question. But they're such a great time, and like I said, he does them all the time. And I think now it's just more stand up. I'm not sure if he's doing as much Q&A stuff as he was, but it's something you don't see a lot of people do. It kind of goes to the commentary thing a little bit as well. But my number 2 pick are going to be the Evening with Kevin Smith Q&As.
That was going to be my next pick, but instead I will go with something else. Okay, so when it comes to directors, when it comes to filmmakers and stuff like that, you assume that is their primary focus, and so that's all you're going to get. All you're going to get, if somebody's a director, the thought of them stepping into other genres, especially in earlier times, in the 90s and stuff like that, you didn't really hear a lot about, like, Steven Spielberg wasn't going to direct an episode of Lost, for example. There were boundaries between worlds, and you didn't want to see it as like a step down in somebody's career. But there were things that Kevin likes doing, and so he just does them. And one of them was something that made me actually get very interested in a character, and also make me realize that, hey, you don't have to be in a box. You don't have to live in a box. You can do one thing and do another thing also. Shawn, for my 3rd pick, I'm going to go with Kevin's writing run on Daredevil.
Okay.
Where he did a comic, him and Joe Quesada, who is the executive producer on the Daredevil television show, right? No, wait. Actually, no, I don't think. Joe Quesada, I think, is now the head of development for DC and Warner Brothers.
Okay.
But him and Kevin together did a run on Daredevil.
Have you read it?
Yes, it's called Guardian Devil. And so in the comic, it deals a lot with Matt and Karen, and they have this kind of, very complicated love story. Black Widow's in it. Doctor Strange is in it. Oh shit, who else is? One thing that I think is interesting that you actually they kind of tease it at the end of the Defenders when Matt he's waking up in a convent after everybody thought he died, and he at the end of the Defenders he wakes up in a convent, and someone says to go get Maggie. In this Daredevil comic, in this Daredevil run called Guardian Devil, Maggie is actually his mother.
Okay.
But she left Matt and Matt's dad when he was little and became a nun.
I gotcha.
Which is why he's all, super Catholic.
Uh-huh. I knew he was super Catholic. I've seen the only thing I know of Daredevil is really that first season of Daredevil.
So I think it'll be interesting to see what, if they're going to pull more from this series or pull more from that comic, that specific comic run, if they're going to pull more from that and put it in the show. But I think that, okay, so again, this is something, hey, I was directing a movie. Hey, I can also write a comic book. I like comic books. Let me try this. I'm like, that's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And it seems mind-blowing at the time. He did it in like, oh shit.
It was in the
When did that-
90s, wasn't it? Like mid to late 90s? Like it was pretty much close to when he broke out of Mallrats and Chasing Amy, I thought.
Yeah, well, I think it got released in like 2001, I think. I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to look it up. But I mean the whole premise of the story is Daredevil finds a kid and there's a chance that the kid might actually be the Messiah or the Antichrist.
Okay.
And it's this kind of up in the air thing of whether or not of like, what it actually is. That's why you see, like Doctor Strange shows up and Mephisto, is in the comic, which Mephisto in Marvel Comics is basically the embodiment of the devil.
Okay.
So,
no, I think that
anyway, super awesome.
That's, he's mentioned that before in some of his interviews and stuff where he talks about like, hey, this opened the doors to like, hey, I want to try this. Which you would think a lot of people that become directors or things like that's like, no, I'm just a director. Like, that's what I do.
Yeah,
like,
I'm not going to lower myself.
Exactly. But he's like, oh, I like comics. Like, well, why not? Let me give it a shot. Let me try this out. Oh, I'm going to make a cartoon. Okay, let me give this a shot. And it's really just, I feel like it's kind of those things like, you give like the normal person like this opening and start like these doors open for him. It's like, oh, well, I'll give this a shot. If I fail, whatever. Like I made movies. Like I'm having fun doing this.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
Exactly.
I like that pick.
There you go. Pick number 3 was Kevin's co-writer credit on Daredevil for the Guardian Devil storyline. They're the Guardian Devil story arc.
All right, Richard, for my 3rd round pick, I want, there's been a few things of his that have really, truly inspired me. Like we talked about Smodcast, but getting into it, like what really pushed me to be like, oh my gosh, like why don't I try writing? It was, at a point in his career where he was getting close to being done with making movies. He had the really bad experience with Bruce Willis. And from one of his podcasts, him and Scott Mosier came up with this extremely creepy, funny, weird idea about a dude sewing another dude into a walrus suit. And in that episode, you see the beginnings of a movie. You see the wheels turning in somebody's head, and it's like, dude, this is a fucking movie. And we got to do this. We got to do this with my Zombie Bears episode.
We did.
And that got my wheels turned. I'm like, fuck, this could be a movie. And I turned it into an audiobook that we have as an episode.
Yeah.
Richard, my 3rd round pick is going to be that movie he created, which was Tusk. Again, get the wheels turned. He's like, this is a movie. He's like, and he asks his audience, he's like, hey, like Walrus, yes, if you want me to do it. Walrus, no, if this is a stupid idea. And I think he got like all Walrus yes about like 1 or 2. And it was basically a dude being like, hey, for the democratic purposes of like this, type of voting, I felt like I should say no. And again, you hear like concern in his voice. He's like, well, I'm not sure if it's like, I'm at a party and drunk and I'm like, I'm going to fucking whip my dick out. And everybody at the party's like, do it. Best idea ever. And the movie released, I went and saw it twice here in theaters, which was kind of the weird thing that it got a big release. Even he was like, this seems more like a midnight release, B movie.
Yeah,
type
I
thing.
wasn't at a theater that was near me.
Yeah, it was here. I think it was only here for like a weekend or 2. I went to see it one night and loved it. I thought it was really good, really clever. And so a night or 2 later, I took my mother-in-law to see it because her and I kind of have a Kevin Smith thing. And so we went and saw it together, and she liked it. And again, it's just that idea of like him taking an idea and running with it and seeing like, where does this go? And it was very inspiring for me to be like, listen, this guy can make this movie. Why can't I try to make a movie? And from that, I shot a few shorts. Like they're not feature-length films, but it's definitely like hey, listen, if I can fucking do this, why not at least give it a shot?
Exactly. I had to wait for it to come out on video, on DVD before I could actually watch the movie. But, I mean, like, I will say, like, the movie is definitely not for everybody. My wife is a huge fan of Kevin Smith and a huge fan of his work. And while she watched Tusk, and I could tell that she wasn't a fan, she was still like, well, I'm still glad he did it. I'm still glad he tried it. I'm glad that he made something that he wanted to make.
Well, it's one of those.
Even though it didn't totally, I mean, like I said, it didn't totally appeal to her, but she wasn't like, oh, this is bullshit and he's bullshit now because he made this bullshit and it's all bullshit. Like, she was like, I'm glad he had fun while making it, because she could tell that there was enjoyment.
Yeah, he made a movie he wants. And the part that always makes me a little teary-eyed is you see the movie, and like if you listen to the episode that they did, is like the Walrus and the Carpenter. I think it's like episode 239.
Mm-hmm.
And you go and you watch it, and like it plays exactly like the episode. And at the very end, as the credits are running, you don't hear music. What you hear is Scott and Kevin Smith talking in that episode. They play the episode of that podcast. And the one thing I love too at the very beginning is you see, based on a podcast episode, whatever number it was, The Walrus and the Carpenter.
Yeah.
And it just like, it gives so much validity to be like, podcasting is this awesome thing that anybody should do. And like, look, I can make a movie from it. And it definitely, like, I feel like this is probably the movie and the situation for Kevin Smith that saved his, not really saved, but like kept him in the movie making mindset, because he
kept him in the mindset of making movies that he wanted to make.
He'd be like, well, fuck it. Like, because you always talk about like the very bad experience he had on Cop Out. And I think at that point he was kind of like, he's like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this. Or not that I can't do this. It's like, I just don't like doing, like, this is not fun. This is not what I want to do. And, you get to the point where you make a movie like this, where it's something you do enjoy. And it's like, wait, I don't have to make studio movies. I can make my movie and just make it for my audience. Because he always references, I think it's the opening to The Dark Knight Returns, where Batman's driving the race car and he like steers into a turn and is about to go out. And he's like, this would be a good death. Bruce Wayne is saying this. And then he corrects it and says, but not today.
Oh,
and I love that Kevin Smith always kind of connects that to the situation he was with Cop Out, where like the studio's like, hey, we love what the show did. We love what you did. Here's 6 scripts or 4 scripts. Choose whichever one you want to do next and you'll be on it. And like he said, like he could just continually do like 1 or 2 movies a year and make fairly good money. And he's like, that would be a good death, but not today. And I feel like that was like you don't have to be a cog in the wheel. You can do your own thing. And that's really what you get from Tusk. And there's an episode that he did where he talks about making Tusk. It's called A Musk of Tusk, where he's doing like a Q&A. And he talks about, like, I've mentioned it numerous times, but he's talking about the situation of, like, somebody asks him, like, how do you get motivated? And he goes through this whole spiel of, like, this is the closest you'll ever be to God is with these characters. Like, you're playing God. And he's like, the interesting thing is, like, can I finish the story? Can I get the story finished? And the next thing is, like, can I get this made into a movie? And he's like, if I hear people saying these things that I wrote down, like, how amazing would that be? And I feel like that's like, the thing, the kids that have like this artistic like push, like I want to try to do this, like listening to that, like if I was like 16 and heard that, like I would have been like, yes, I could do it. And I'd probably be in LA right now, like, at a male strip club dancing, because everybody's like, your stuff's stupid. I'm like, yeah, it's stupid.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid. And I'm stupid.
Can you put $1 in my G-string?
And Dad didn't love me.
But
so I guess I'm dancing. Laura, I thought you said he was making movies.
Oh, he's not making movies, Laura. He's making pornos.
Oh, Laura, where did we go wrong?
Well, as long as my poopy bear's doing what he loves. I don't love this, Mom.
Oh God, now she put $1 in. Well, you have to eat.
But for my 3rd round pick, Richard, I'm going to go with I'd say it's a great movie, Tusk.
Okay. For number 4, I'm going to go with another podcast that he has done that it's a different, it started as a different incarnation. So I'm going to go kind of back to the earlier incarnation of it. Right now it's kind of a weekly running kind of general newsy, comic booky news things, which is great. And I watch it religiously. But before that, it was a podcast where Kevin interviewed creators and actors and all sorts of people, and they were all based around one thing, and that one thing was Batman. So, Shawn, for my 4th round pick, I'm going to go with Fat Man on Batman.
Great pick. That was going to be one of my next ones.
So, in the beginning, it was, like I said, it was a lot of interviews. Well, okay, so what it is now is it's a series that you can find on YouTube. You can find it on his YouTube channel, and it's him and a friend of his, Mark Bernardin, who basically discuss, news stories in the comic, sci-fi kind of genre.
Very pop culture kind of thing.
Very pop culture kind of like, hey, let's run down the big things that happened in the last, week or 2 weeks or whatever. Before it was that, it was a podcast where he interviewed artists and writers and editors that worked on the Batman comic over the 75, 76 years that it's been on. And some of those interviews, not only are they captivating fucking interviews in terms of people talking about, what they did for the character, what they added, things that you kind of take for granted now, that you think things just come kind of out of the ether.
Yeah.
And you actually get to put a name to it. Like, hey, this guy made this. Hey, Ra's al Ghul was created by this guy. The reason that Batman's Batmobile looks the way it does now is because this guy, drew it a little different, and now it's this. I mean, not only do you have 2-hour interviews with guys like Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil.
He had Mark Hamill on there.
That's what exactly interviews with Mark Hamill. And I mean, yes, sometimes, there's tangents that go off. Like, obviously, these people didn't just work on Batman. So not only do you get insights into their personal careers and their personal stories, but you get an insight into the way, kind of like a director's commentary tells you how a movie's made, and these podcasts kind of tell you how comics are made or how comics were made. They give you the story. They give you the story of how certain things come to be. It's like a director's commentary for a comic book in a way.
Yeah, to an extent. Well, and it really brought light to a lot of these people that nobody knew about too.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, like,
yeah. Unless you were super into comics.
Yeah.
You don't know who Neil Adams is. You don't know who Denny O'Neil is and guys like that. But the shit that you see on screen is because of these guys sitting at a fucking drawing table or sitting at a typewriter or a computer and made this shit up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that you think like artists and stuff like that never seem to get their due when it comes to like these things you see on TV screen. Like the only thing you see on the TV screen is like Tim Burton. Like, oh my God, Tim Burton must have created Batman. And you think about with that show, I mean, to an extent, you have to feel like, did that help push the Bill Finger thing? Like getting exposure for that guy to be like, wait, there's a guy who has a lot to do with Batman that's not being credited.
Yeah.
Because I think he had a whole episode with Bill Finger's granddaughter, I think.
I think he did that more recently.
Yeah, it's fairly recent.
He's talked about Bill Finger a lot in some of those earlier interviews about how this was a guy. He was kind of the unsung hero of Batman, but also kind of a dirty little secret in those kinds of circles.
But you think about your earlier pick, like Kevin Smith loves Batman. Like you knew he loved Batman. At this point, he's like, wait, there's a door open here where I can do a Batman podcast. I can interview, like I know Mark Hamill. I could get him on. I can get, Neil Gaiman on. I can get, Conroy. I can get like all these people on and interview them. And as a fan, ask them these questions that I've been curious about my whole life.
Yeah. And then that, not only were there those interviews, but then you had this is where I got introduced to Mark Bernardin, was him and Mark doing commentary for the Batman movies. They started with Tim Burton's Batman and did I think they did Batman and Batman Returns, and they just recently went back and started the Nolan movies. So they've done Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. And I don't know if they've done The Dark Knight Rises yet. I can't remember.
I don't think so.
But yeah, that's my pick number 4 is the podcast Fat Man on Batman.
Just to add on that, like I love, like I talked about with Smodcast, I didn't know who Scott Mosier was. And you get exposed to me, find like, oh, here's a new friend that I really like. Mm-hmm. Fat Man on Batman did with Mark Bernardin. Like, I absolutely love Mark Bernardin. Like, you know, his Twitter account's awesome. The dude's got a lot of cool things to say on that podcast, and he's just kind of a fun dude to like listen to. So it's like, hey, I have a
very knowledgeable.
Yeah, he's
and very insightful when it comes to, you know, picking out themes and picking out the subtle nuances of not just television and movies, but also the subtle nuances of story and what they mean and what they're trying to say, or what his take is on what an artist is trying to say.
And even like how to change it. Like Kevin always says, like, fucking hire this man. This is a writer right here.
Oh my God. There was an episode, I don't know if it was him and Mark. I think it might have been him and Mark, where they were talking about how they would do Gotham.
Yeah. I listened to that one.
I listened to that and I was like, holy fuck, that would be an amazing goddamn show.
I can't remember. I heard that pretty recently. I think it was, they had a, David Finch, I think it was, on in a panel. And they had talked about that in an episode right before Gotham got announced. They talked about how they would do a TV show.
How they would do like this Batman as a kid kind of TV show. And I was like, that sounds fucking amazing.
And then Gotham was announced like a week or two later. And they felt like with the newer season, some of the things they talked about seemed to be happening more. They're like, it's probably all coincidence, but, you know, in 50 years, it's like, yeah, we totally stole that from Mark and Kevin. They'd be like, oh, it's awesome.
Right.
Now pay us. Well, Richard, for my 4th round pick, I am going to go with the first Kevin Smith movie that really wasn't a Kevin Smith movie. This was one that when it came out, the girlfriend I had at the time was like, hey, we should watch this. I'm like, fuck, this has got Ben Affleck and what's her face? Jennifer Lopez in it. Like, weren't they in Geely? And like, this seems like a, you know, pat on the back movie for those two. And she's like, yeah, but I really want to watch it. And she put it in. I'm like, wait, written and directed by Kevin Smith. Is that the same Kevin Smith from Clerks and Mallrats? And I was invested. And a lot of people, and even Kevin kind of shits on this movie a lot, which I don't think he should, because I think it's one of his most beautiful movies ever. You know, it's a father-son, father-child type of story where, you know, you're trying to, you know, it's like, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, are you trying to improve your life and your, you know, job, or are you, you know, you're kind of putting your kid to the side, or should your kid be the first thing? And I cry every time at the very end of this because George Carlin, like his acting in this is like fucking just top notch.
Yeah, Carlin's pitch perfect.
Because like there's this whole thing where he's letting them live with him, and of course, you know, as a grandfather, you know, he's excited that his grandkids living with him, seeing her every day. He's excited that, you know, his son's living with him because, you know, as you get older, like you miss those things. And the you know, the ending of it, you know, of course you have the happy moment, but you know, Ben Affleck and George Carlin are talking, and you know, Ben's like, hey, you know, you kind of want your own time or something like that. Or I can't remember exactly what it is, but he says basically like, he's like, or he says something like, you want to live on your own. He's like, well, not as much as I want to die on my own. And you're like, oh my God. Like he wants to be with him because he's getting older and he knows it. And it always brings a tear to my eye. It's like, oh man. And the very end of that, because I think he put this movie out either around the time or a few years after Kevin Smith's dad passed away. And so you see this whole like family dynamic thing happening. And in the end, he says like, you know, this is for you, Pops. Kevin's saying it's like a credited thing. And it's just like, oh, like it's just such a beautifully written, beautifully emotional type of thing where it really captures a lot of the emotions of just being a son, being a dad, and being a parent. And,
I couldn't watch that movie.
Have you seen it?
I've seen it, but I'm saying like I saw it a long time ago. I think if I saw it now, I would probably like lose my shit.
Yeah. But I feel like the whole Geely thing kind of screwed him up on that and I feel like Kevin Smith's kind of hit that on a few things where it's like if this movie was just out,
like 1 year sooner or 1 year later.
And it's kind of like with Zach and Miri, like that was one of those like if it was a year later or a year earlier, like I think it might have been just like the Seth train was a little bit overhyped at that point. People were like, oh, I'm kind of done with the stoner stuff, and it's not a stoner movie, really.
No, not really. I would definitely say it wasn't.
But
although that was the movie where he started smoking weed, so there is that.
But my fourth round pick, one of my favorite movies of his, and it's not really a View Askew type movie, is Jersey Girl.
All right, Shawn, pick number 5. So for pick number 5, I'm going to go and pick another movie, and I'm going to pick a movie that didn't really do a lot for me personally. Like I wasn't sitting there going, oh my God, this movie is speaking my truth. But I did like the way that it made other people react, namely my 2 girls. So for my 5th round pick, I'm going with Yoga Hosers.
Nice.
And don't get me wrong, I liked Yoga Hosers. I actually really liked Yoga Hosers. I would say I liked Yoga Hosers more than Tusk.
Okay.
Me personally. But the thing that I loved so much about it is it's a movie he made with his daughter and with his friend and with his daughter, not only with his daughter, but with his daughter's friend, wrote the movie with the 2 of them in mind. And I watched this, and he always said like, hey, this is a movie for teenage girls.
Yeah.
It was like his version of Strange Brew.
It's the movie he wanted to see if he was a 13-year-old girl.
Right. And I didn't totally understand that until I watched it with my 2 girls, which granted one is a bit younger than 13 and the other one's a bit older than 13, but they both seem to totally identify. And that was really cool to me. I was like, oh my God, he actually did make a movie. He knew exactly what he was doing. He did make a movie for teenage girls. He totally nailed it.
Yeah, I love that. Like at Q&As, a couple times you'll hear where like a guy or a woman will bring up their daughter and be like, she's like, hey, she wants to ask something, and talks about how much she loved Yoga Hosers.
Yeah, another movie based on a podcast. Yeah,
a little bit. It basically kind of comes off that Tusk idea. The name comes from Yoga Hosers, and one of the characters, the one that Jason, what's his name? I always forget his name. The dude that played the yoga guy, the Yogi Berra.
Oh my God. I had it in the lot. Justin Long.
I always want to call him Jason Lee, but it's not Jason Lee, or I want to say Justin Lee. But like his character in that's perfectly funny.
Open up, you goddamn yoga hoser.
But yeah, I thought it was a good movie. I know I watched it with Tiff, and I would say I like Tusk better than Yoga Hoser just because I think of everything.
You're not a teenage
Tusk,
girl.
And there is that. I'm not a teenage girl.
And you haven't been... because of the restraining order, you haven't been in contact with a teenage girl.
Well, and my wife didn't really get into it much, but she's not really into that humor anyway. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm going around. It's like, hey, teenage girls want to watch this movie.
Get out of here! The last time I'm telling you. Again, I feel kind of the same way about it as I do Mallrats. Like, I don't feel like I need to spoil the plot. I think even if you're a fan, you've seen it, and if you're not a fan, I think you should still see it because it is a movie that's written for teenage girls, yes, but you can totally see elements of, he says it's kind of his version of Strange Brew. You can totally see that in there, and you can totally see, the when it comes to the plot and the themes of the plot and how it's these 2 girls and their friends and and what it's like to be a teenage girl today.
Yeah. I'm not even supposed to be here today.
Aside from, I don't think teenage girls have to deal with Nazi bratwurst, but whatever. Anyway, pick number 5. I'm going with Yoga Hosers.
Good pick. So for my 5th round pick, Richard, I am going to go with a foray into the TV realm that Kevin Smith went into. And this was taking Randall and Dante into the animated world. I am going to go with my 5th round pick, the Clerks cartoon. This is one I own on DVD, and I've gone through and watched it a couple times, and it's one of those things that if Adult Swim was bigger at the time where he tried to do this, like this would be an Adult Swim TV show. Like it would play right next to Robot Chicken and Rick and Morty. You know, you got these two characters going on these extravagant adventures. You got Jay and Silent Bob playing a little back end on there to make it funny. You know, you bring in some celebrity characters at times, and it was a fun ride. And I feel like, you know, that's one of those things that, you know, you and I are working on a comedy audio drama podcast right now, and that's definitely one of the influences for it. It's a very much like a Adult Swim type cartoon that, you know, is just right on the balance of being inappropriate. And I always love. I don't think they made it, but they had an idea for an episode where it was basically like single white female, but it was going to be the car from Knight Rider. So Dante and Knight Rider were going to be getting really close, and Randall's going to start getting jealous because of it and have like a single white female situation.
Nice.
But, you know, it's one of those things, again, it always feels like Kevin just doesn't get his full run on things, because I feel like that would be perfect for like I said it 3 times now, but an Adult Swim TV show that everybody would tune into because it's funny. It's, you know, good 15, 20 minutes of TV, and, you know, you get your giggles and your laughs and you move on to the next episode.
Well, I think it's also, I mean, I think it's like we said earlier, you know, like, hey, if it happened a little bit later or a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And maybe in the case of the Clerks TV animated show, if it would have happened maybe someplace different where he could be a bit more freewheeling with his humor.
Because it was on ABC or Fox, right?
Yeah, I think it was on ABC.
Okay.
And so obviously they can't talk about sucking 37 dicks in a row on ABC.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
ABC stands for absolutely no cocks.
Well, whatever. Okay.
All right, my 5th round picks is Clerks the cartoon.
Oh. Okay. Now this is the part where I'm feeling torn. Where do I go for number 6? Okay, number 6 for my 6th round pick. Again, it's another podcast. It's a podcast that I make it a point to download every single. I think I usually grab it on Monday. It's a live show, but I listen to the podcast version. Introduced me to another one of his friends, and also introduced me to a really funny dude that does so much aside from on top of just this podcast. Shawn, for pick number 6, I'm going with Hollywood Babylon.
Nice. This is one I've listened to a few episodes before. I've just started getting into it more on the weekly basis, but it's your pick. Let me hear it.
So it's an interesting way to recap the week in terms of a lot of not just pop culture when it comes to comics and stuff like that, but all sorts of stories coming out of Hollywood, pointing out like stupid bullshit that celebrities do, pointing stupid ideas and dumb shit about just it kind of mocks Hollywood, and it mocks its own self-importance, mocks the self-importance of Hollywood. And that I love. I like especially Ralph Garman, who's Kevin's co-host. I really find his cynical view very interesting, and an interesting contrast to Kevin, which always seems very like, like very cheery and positive, and not one to talk shit about anybody.
Yeah.
I feel like Ralph is that guy that's on his shoulder going, man, fuck these people. These people are fucking stupid. And then there's a good Kevin on the other shoulder saying, now, we don't need to talk like that. And then Ralph's like, no, fuck that. Fucking Gwyneth Paltrow and her stupid goop website. That thing's fucking stupid. Vagina rocks and getting it steamed. Kevin's like, now, and then Kevin's like, now, let's not be hasty. But I mean, the show is kind of broken up into set segments.
Yeah. It's kind of like a radio show without being a radio show.
Exactly. It's kind of like a radio show or a variety show, like a talk show without being a talk show. And I enjoy the format, and I enjoy the banter between Ralph and Kevin. And they just recently, I guess, have it where you can watch the show.
Babelvision,
I haven't actually done that, but sometimes clips of it, they take clips and put the clips on YouTube on Kevin's YouTube channel, and I've watched some of those, and they're pretty fucking funny.
Yeah, Ralph's voices are amazing.
Yes, Ralph, the man of 8 impressions.
Which they've counted, it's like 80.
There was one clip where fucking Kevin is talking about like Spider-Man getting caught jerking off or something like that. And oh my God, it's like Kevin loses his fucking mind. Like he laughs so hard. He makes this joke, and I mean he laughs at his own joke, which you would think like, oh, that sounds stupid, but it's fucking like he loses his mind, and it's fucking hilarious. But yeah, I mean, I would say definitely, like, if you haven't listened to Hollywood Babylon, check out a couple episodes because they're really fucking great, and I think everybody would like them. And that's me for pick number 6. It's Hollywood Babylon.
Yeah, and just like the thing that's really cool about Hollywood Babylon is, you know, Ralph had his own radio show in L.A., and him and Kevin, like, he told Kevin, like, hey, we should do our own Saturday morning show. And so they did a demo reel, pitched it, and they're like, nobody wants to listen to talk radio. Like, what the fuck are you doing? That's all dead. And so then, you know, Kevin started up Smodcastle and stuff, and Ralph was like, hey, we should do our own show. And they started Hollywood Babylon, and every week they sell out their theater. And Ralph recently, I think he got released or /fired or was cut at the radio station, but so he's like, all right, well, fuck it, and starts his own podcast, which is doing very, very well. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like radio's dying, not talk podcasting. Good pick.
Thank you.
So for my 6th round pick, Richard, this is kind of, again, this was a time in Kevin Smith's life where he was kind of at that crossroads of like, am I going to do movies anymore, or am I done? And he did a movie again that was really, really different from any of his other movies. I think it was the very first one that, like, Jersey Girl was kind of different, but still in that same genre. But this one was way different, and it's the movie Red State. Now, I'm not actually doing the Red State movie itself, but I'm doing what he did with that, which is the Red State movie tour.
Oh, I did like that.
Yeah.
I think he had that as like an episode or 2 of Smodcast, and that didn't he spin it off into kind of its own separate show?
Yeah.
It's so I don't know if this is like a 7th pick for you or anything like that, but when you just talk about the Smodcast network in general, if you go to the site, like you see, you know, 15, 20 different fucking shows. And some of them have already, you know, some of them have come and some of them have gone. Some of them only lasted like 2 or 3 episodes. But like, who cares? Like, it's up there and it's free, and have at it.
It's cool. A lot of them led to like jobs for people. Like Katie Morgan did a Talking Sex, and that led her to like an HBO TV show.
Yeah.
Where she was like basically a sex therapist type thing. I don't know if she's still doing it or not, but
I don't know either.
But with the Red State tour, so this was coming off Cop Out. She's like, fuck it, I want to make my own movie. Great cast. He had John Goodman. Why did I forget his name? Michael Parks. You know, great. Like, it was a great movie. I liked it a lot. But he goes to Sundance. He's like, all right, I'm going to sell this movie that I've made. And he gets up. Well, first off, so again, you talk about him being like a little too early. He came out and said, hey, I want to do like a fan funding for this. Like there's GoFundMe pages, or I can't remember what it was back then, but he's like, I'm going to put this up so people can, basically fund the movie for me.
Yeah.
And he got so much flack for it. It's like, oh, look at Kevin Smith having people pay for his own movie. And look what everybody does now.
Yeah, and that's what everybody does now.
The new Super Troopers, too, they got all their funding from that. It's going to be a national release. And so he's like, okay, well, that's fucking stupid. So he ends up having somebody else fund the movie, goes to Sundance, and he's like, you know what? I'm not going to sell this movie to some distributor that's going to, because I think it only costs like $3 million or $5 million to make. He's like, I don't want some distributor to buy this movie and spend $20 million on advertising, inflate the budget by so much so that when we put it out, it'll look like it failed because it didn't make all the money back because they put so much in advertising. So he goes to Sundance. And he's like, all right, we're about to put this up for auction, and the winning bid is $5, and it's me. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take this movie and we're going to go at the theaters all across the country and do a red state tour where people can come and see this movie, and we'll do a Q&A afterwards. And people lost their shit when this happened.
Yeah.
They're like, Kevin Smith has lost his mind. Kevin Smith is washed up. Kevin Smith has gone crazy.
Yeah, I would say if there's any sort of detriment to his career or anything that's kind of hurt him, it always seems like he's either too early or too late. Like it seems like he never got to hit that. He got to hit that sweet spot once with Clerks.
Yeah.
But it seemed like after that, he was always either too early to, and everybody thought he was fucking crazy and out of his mind and being dumb, or he was too late with something and everybody said, oh, he's just, hacking off fucking.
Yeah, like with Jersey Girl kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that kind of always feels like, I always feel like I missed it by just that much.
Yeah. Right.
And, again, this is something that a lot of people do now is they'll take their movies on tour and just go to these, what's the Alamo Draft House. They'll take their movies to all these Alamo Draft Houses and do small screenings with the audience that wants to see it. And, like with this, like he did just that. And he made the movie he wanted with a great cast and tried to take it out and do something that nobody's done before. And I'm glad that he stuck to his like guns and didn't, cave under all that, like, I say bad press, but it was really inappropriate press towards him. Like, instead of being like, oh my gosh, this is kind of visionary. Like, he took a movie, super cheap.
Or like, hey, this guy's not, he's out of his, he's not pigeonholed to one specific genre. This guy doesn't just do comedy, like.
He's not a cog in the wheel of Hollywood where we basically spit out these movies. He's like, I want to try these different things. And like, being an artist, you should be able to do that, but it's one of those things that you get up there in certain spaces of Hollywood. It's like, what's going to make the money?
Fucker, back in your box.
Yeah, why are you out of your box, Kevin Smith? Make funny movies,
make us laugh.
But his
more
core
stoner humor.
That's what the studios are saying. But the core audience is like, I'll give Tusk a shot. I'll give Red State a
sure.
shot. Yoga Hoser, sure. Moose Jaws, when the fuck's that going to happen? Jaws with a moose, I'm in.
I want to hear the Indianapolis speech with a moose.
Yes. I always said that. I'll say this again. Because he always talked about in Moose Jaws that Silent Bob was going to die. And I feel like the next movie that he made after Moose Jaws, he should have Alanis Morissette show up and do some kind of like funky thing and bring Silent Bob back to life. Like, I always thought that'd be cool. Like Jay like has like a
See, I think if that happened now, people would be like, hey, who's that?
Yeah. But like Jay would like have like a thing of weed and she'd take it and like break half his weed, like taking his rib and put it on the ground and make Silent Bob again. But for my 6th round pick, Richard, I'm going to go with the Red State Tour.
Oh, we're at pick number 7, aren't we?
Money shot time, buddy.
We're at pick number 7, and so that means I just realized not only do I get the honor of the first pick, but I also get the honor of first last pick. And so I think there's no better way to bookend my list than with the movie that started it all. Shawn, pick number 7. I'm taking Clerks. What now?
Good pick.
What now? See, I just made my list the best list by putting that on my list. This is why I win drafts, is because I snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. And in this case, victory is this black and white treasure that has sent both of us on the journey that we started on. Everything's here. Before when we started the show, we talked about the language of our genesis. The language of bromance is the genesis. This is where it started. Well, guess what? This is where that started.
Yeah, definitely.
This is the start of one journey that led to the start of our journey. And that's where it is.
It's one of those movies that when I watched it, it was in black and white. It's a little different. Like, I laughed a lot. But it was the original ending that really like caught me, because it was one of those things where I was in college at the time. I was working a shitty job. We worked together. Like it was getting to the point too where it wasn't as fun as it used to be. You had shitty customers. You had shitty not really management, but shitty owners that were just jerks to you. And you watch him, and like this guy's like, and this is like me. Like, I got called in all the time to that restaurant where it's like, hey, so and so can't make it. So what time are you gonna be here? It's like, fuck. Like, I'm not even supposed to be here today. And you really get that feel from that show. And at the ending of it, we see, spoilers, Dante gets shot. It was cut from the theatrical release, but
I didn't see that, and I didn't know that was an alternate ending until, again, when they had the 24-hour marathon on Independent Film Channel. So they would play the movie, then they played the movie with commentary, and I think in between the two, they were like, hey, this was an alternate ending that was filmed for the movie. I was like, wait, there's an alternate ending?
Yeah, it was the original ending. It's what they released it as with their first festival they went to.
Yeah.
And to me, I think he just did it. He said it in some things. He's like, I just didn't know how to end a movie. And the movies I watched, like, it ends on something like this. But to me, it said so many things. It's like, the dude wasn't supposed to be there today, and he ends up getting shot. Like, he put his life on hold for his job and got shot. And it's like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? And I feel like shit because, like, I wish I,
is that why you were always like, Richard, we're closed, lock the door.
Yeah.
Lock the door.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to get shot today. I'm not even supposed to be here.
Dude,
lock the door.
So it's a side story, but when I worked at the job before, it was before I knew Clerks, but there's a guy that worked there. And he got off, and like the phone rang because it was a grocery store, so I was at the checkout. It was a small grocery store, not the greatest part of town. And the dude like called, and I didn't realize it. I picked it up. He's like, I'm gonna fucking shoot everybody in that store. I was like, who is this? He's like, I'm coming right now. I was like my fucking heart was racing.
Right.
I freaked the fuck out. I hang up the phone. I lock the doors. Like, there's customers in line. Like, it was busy. And everybody's like, look. I was very close. Like, I called the JJ, my buddy. I was about ready to call him and be like, dude, what the fuck do we do?
So wait a minute. So that guy calls, and your first instinct is call your friend.
He was the manager at the store. He was working that day.
What about the police, Shawn?
Well, it was about to that point.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it wasn't just going to be, hey, got some shit you need to deal with. But like my heart, like that's the hardest my heart's ever beat, because I was like,
that's crazy.
I had no fucking clue what to do at that point. And this was before, like, now, like, this is one of those things, like, somebody did that now, like, I'd probably have a heart attack.
Right.
But then the guy came up laughing. He's like, hey, did you get my phone call? I was like, you fucking son of a bitch. And yeah, I was pissed. I mean, I was like 16 at the time.
Yeah.
And people looking like, hey, you look like something's wrong. Are you sick?
We're all gonna die.
But yes,
take the women.
But that's exactly why I had you lock the doors. Rich, it's 11 o'clock. Shut the doors. Lock them.
I'm not gonna die today.
You know, going back to those times, I really kind of miss not really the work, but like after we closed, it was just kind of like me and you, and maybe like one or two other people.
Good times.
Yeah, like we'd make some grub, watch some movies.
Yeah,
I miss it.
Me too. Now I'm sad.
Sorry.
Make me feel better.
All right, Richard.
See, I talk about Clerks, and you're like, oh, remember that ending that was really fucking depressing where he gets shot? Why you gotta be such a downer? Stop being a Debbie Downer. Bring me up.
Well, Richard,
raise me
I
up.
will bring you up. And you said that you had the better money shot pick with Clerks, but I think I have the better money shot pick, and it is of Kevin Smith's kind of movement he's made, and it is the why not movement.
Oh, Okay. All right. That's just good. You're
Yeah.
inspiring. You're being inspiring. I like this.
I wish after I saw the devastating Clerks, I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Someone's like, hey, why not do whatever you want? Like, that's genius. You know, it's two simple words. It's like, you know, he's mentioned it in multiple podcasts. It really kind of came around the Tusk movement. And it's like, you know, don't be around people that ask, like, why are you doing that? Because that's what happened with us when we wanted to start our podcast. I told somebody, that's the worst thing you can do. I'm like, you know, somebody that I thought I cared about me. I'm like, hey, Richard, I want to do this really cool idea. Well, why? Yeah, you're right. That's stupid.
Because we thought it'd be funny.
He's my friend. That's a waste of money and stupid. Okay.
You're right. It's stupid.
And I want to give my wife more props than anything, because when I told her because whenever like people, it's probably more me, I guess, my personality, but whenever like you tell people like, hey, I'm going to do this thing, not really so much now, but like back then when I was younger and very much like glass half full, I'm like, hey, I want to do this thing. I'm all excited about it. Like, why? Just go to work and don't rock the boat.
I'll start with your mom.
Yeah. But like my wife, I'm like, Richard and I are going to do a podcast. And she's like, oh, okay, it sounds like fun. That's all you got to say. And I'm like, yeah, it does.
It does sound like fun. I love your encouragement. Marry me.
But, and then and I feel like that's what's great about you. Like I'm like, hey, I want to do this thing. You're like, yeah, do it. And you could do the same thing. You're like, hey, I want to do this thing. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Why
you
not?
should do it. I should do it.
I'm doing it right now.
That's all the encouragement I needed.
And it's like, I think he said it something like, you know, just a little encouragement to an artist can help so much.
Exactly. And it costs nothing.
Oh, yeah. And that's why, like, you know, with other podcasters, you know, like there's people around here that do movies. Like, so recently, I've done some shorts for like film races, and there's another group here in town that does them. And I follow them on Facebook, and I know one of the guys through like a channel of people. And when I went to see Star Wars, I'm like, oh, I think that's those people. And after the movie, they were standing there, and I'm like, oh, well, you know, I'm just going to go up and say hi. I'm like, hey, are you guys such and such? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you guys are doing a great job with your stuff. Like, keep it up. Like, I've seen your short films and everything and your stuff you'd put online. Keep it up. Like, that's really cool. And it's one of those things like, oh, well, thanks. And they may have been like, that dude's fucking creepy.
Yeah. What's that dude?
He's stalking us. Police! But, like, you hope.
Not again.
But you hope.
And then Shawn ran to his car.
Yeah. But you hope just, like, little encouragements like that. It's like, oh, well, like, yeah, like, I'll keep doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I know it sounds crazy to some, but occasionally we do get an email here and there where somebody's like, or an iTunes review or something like that, where somebody's like, hey, I like you guys. I think you guys sound really well together. You guys should keep doing what we're doing or what you're doing. And then we're like, oh, somebody listened and they liked it. Or they're just being nice.
Either
or
way,
it's my mom.
This is amazing.
But I don't care.
But yeah, Richard, my money shot pick it's just two simple words. Why not? And it's a why not movement that Kevin Smith has done. And
exactly.
You know,
because don't surround yourself with why people.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with why not
Exactly.
people. Hey, I want to do something. Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead. Fuck it. Why not?
And it's one of those things, like he says it in all of his Q&As, like right at the end. Like we went to Podcast Movement a few years back, and he was one of the keynote speakers. And that's what he was just promoting. He's like, just go out and try it, because what's it going to hurt? Like,
exactly.
The alternative is it doesn't exist. All right, Richard. So what are some of your and buts that you have for our Kevin Smith draft?
Oh, geez. Let's see. I had Scan BC on there just because Scan BC is fucking hilarious to me. I laugh so hard at fucking like him and Scott doing Scan BC.
Scan BC, Scott. There's a guy who's done a comic based off that.
Oh, there's some videos on YouTube where somebody's animated their
awesome.
Scan BC stuff. Oh my god, they're fucking great. I had his farewell episodes for people like Prince and Carrie Fisher. He did podcast episodes where he talked about, you know, the one for Carrie Fisher, like really fucking, like that one was so great and so sweet and, you know, showed you such a not really so much like, hey, she was more than Princess Leia. Like, we all knew that she was more than Princess Leia. But I think but those farewell episodes, I really, really enjoyed. I had his TV show spoilers again, because you kind of got introduced to, or you got to see an interview of the big icons of, your geek childhood interviewed by a fan. I mean, because that's basically what it was. He had people like Carrie Fisher and Stan Lee and those kind of people on there. And it was basically like a fan interviewing Carrie Fisher or Stan Lee. And you get the questions that you yourself would probably ask if you had the opportunity.
We see all that just spawns from his podcasting. Like, all that training he's done led him to that, which led him to his own talk show, essentially, that he did with that one dude on AMC.
Yeah. This is a very lesser known thing, but way, way back in like 2001, Jon Favreau had a television show called Dinner for Five. And Kevin was on for a couple episodes, but he was on there one episode. It was him, and I think Stan Lee was at this one, but it was Stan Lee, J.J. Abrams,
Jason Lee,
Ben
Affleck.
And it kind of blows your mind a little to hear somebody like J.J. Abrams back in 2001 talking about something like Star Wars. And then I'm thinking like, oh my God, you're going to be fucking making Star Wars movies.
You're going to do that and Star Trek. You're going to cross the streams.
Yeah, in like 15 years, you're going to be making this shit. Like, at the time, I think all he had under his belt was like, what, Alias and Lost?
Yeah, maybe a season or two of Lost.
Yeah. So shit like that. That was crazy to me. Did I have it? I think that was pretty much all I had.
Let's see. So for my end butts, 4 quick ones I just had were basically the other movies we had mentioned. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, Clerks 2, which my favorite story of Clerks 2 is when I went to see that movie. We walked in, and about 5-10 minutes into the movie, this older couple gets up and walks out. And
you told me about this. I remember this.
And when I say older couple, like, the dude had like a walker, and it took him like another 10 minutes to get up the thing. So I have no clue what movie they thought they're going to see.
I have no idea either.
And they, like I said, left 10 minutes.
I thought this was about accounting.
It says eat pussy on the side of the restaurant. This is unreasonable. Dogma and then Chasing Amy.
Dogma. My wife loves Dogma. My wife is a recovering Catholic, and she loves that movie. That's probably, I'm pretty sure she loves that movie. It's probably her favorite. It's probably a toss up between Dogma and Clerks, but I would say Dogma would probably win out for her.
It's really good. And then the last thing I had on here, it's kind of a pick for us, I guess, but it's the Smodco Pod U. Him and Will kind of hit on that every now and then, but it's a podcast where they basically, just kind of feature different podcasts that have kind of taken the why not piece and like ran with it.
Exactly. From what I understand, there's some of the best podcasts that are on the internet, like ever.
Yep.
Like it's like a hall of fame of best podcasts you could ever hope to put in your ears, from what I understand.
And Richard, there's a great one on episode 5, which is
okay. I'll have to listen to that.
You might know
at some point.
Yeah, it's us. We're featured on there. Which
don't do that. They were supposed to find out on their own.
But I remember,
like, hey, wait a minute. Wait a god damn it.
I remember we submitted our podcast to Will to be part of it, and I remember I was driving to I think it was a Dairy Queen, and I get the email saying, "Hey, you guys are featured on Smodco Pod U." And I was like, "I'm quitting my job! No, I made it."
Things are gonna start. It's like that scene in The Jerk where Steve Martin's like, "There are no phone books here. There are no phone books here. My name in print. This is the kind of spontaneous publicity that makes people. Things are going to start happening to me now.
But it was pretty cool. So, well, let me run through the picks real quick. So, Richard's first round pick, you have Mallrats. Second round pick, Clerks Director's Commentary. Third round pick, Daredevil Comic Run. Fourth round pick, Fat Man on Batman. Fifth round pick, Yoga Hosers. Sixth round pick, Hollywood Babylon. And the seventh round money shot pick, the thing that started it all, Clerks. So for me, for my first round pick, I have Smodcast. Second round pick, Q&As. Third round pick, Tusk. Fourth round pick, Jersey Girl. Fifth round pick, Clerks the Cartoon. Sixth round pick, Red State Tour. And seventh round money shot pick, the Why Not Movement.
I like that seventh round pick.
Yeah.
I do like that one. I mean, not as much as mine, but it's the closest you could get.
Whenever like I'll get on like the podcast Reddit every now and then, you'll see people like, hey, should I do a podcast? And I basically just throw that whole why not out there and be like, dude, just fucking do it. Like, why not?
Do it.
Well, Richard, as our 37th in a row draft on Kevin Smith is coming to a close, do you have any Richard's closing thoughts?
I don't see, like, this is hard. Like, how do you put a closing thought on this? I'll just, you know what? My closing thought is this. Thanks. If you end up hearing this at some point in your life, Kevin, thanks. And that's all I got.
I think that's a great way to end it. So let me do a little bit of housekeeping. Visit our website. We're at languageofbromance.com. Follow us on Twitter. We're at languageofbro. Email us at eatthebeaver@languageofbromance.com. Check out the LLB Army intelligence reports. Like us on Facebook. And go out and recruit somebody for the LLB Army by getting someone you know to subscribe on Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify.
And when you were there, throw up a rating and a review, because we love the ratings and reviews, and iTunes loves the ratings and reviews, and it keeps us relevant and in everybody's ear holes.
Yeah. And remember, you can always find us as part of the Pod Bros Network.
It contains many of the ships that were launched by the one big ship.
That is true. Yes, it's got some of the many thousand podcasts
there
launched by Kevin Smith.
That's what I was trying to get out.
And if you want to throw a little money in our tip jar, like, I don't know, like $37, go to our Patreon accounts, www.patreon.com/languageofbromance.
Do it.
All right. Well, is there anything else before I close her out?
No.
All right. Well, that's all the Bromance we have for this show. I'm Shawn.
And I'm Richard.
And I say we eat the beaver. We totally do.
No, we totally do.